Hello, my name is Tom Jobson. I currently teach for Frederick County Parks and Rec in Virginia, near Winchester. Previously, I also taught for Fairfax County Parks and Rec in Virginia for over 15 years, give or take a bit. And I'm making this video as an introduction to fencing for Frederick County. There are three weapons that are associated with fencing. First one is called the epee, but basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the real weapons that are descended from the actual dueling weapons. First one, basically what the Three Musketeers would have used. This one is about a 17th century rapier. Very sharp, very nice. This is basically a museum quality blade, and it is quite nice. The new weapon is called the epee. I'm just going to drop this one on the floor for a second. And before the epees were electrified, they're what we refer to as dry. And at one point in time in dueling, with the rapier or the epee, they decided not to kill each other anymore. They even went so far as to put a little three-pronged barb on the end of the weapon, so you couldn't run the other guy through. Basically what you want to do, even with dueling, they decided not to kill each other anymore. Decided when somebody got cut bad enough that blood would drip down, hit the field of honor, then a duel would be satisfied. This is where the three-pronged barb comes from. Now, I always had a problem with the term epee for quite a long time. Epee is just a generic French term for sword. Well, actually, this was referred to as a dueling weapon until about 1930, give or take a year or two. On the board here, there's a list of equipment for sale, and it lists both dueling swords and epees. And I think they changed the name to epee so it didn't sound quite so bad. And at that point, they were still selling the point derriere. Now, if you were dueling with somebody with the point derriere, depending on how much you didn't like them, they might be a 1/4 inch, they might be 3/4 inch. So basically, that's what they were using for dueling. And actually, there was a duel in the 1960s over in France that was done. Now, put this down for a second. Modern epee for electric fencing, the little orange cord here would go up your sleeve, up to the weapon, and the cord here would be attached to your jacket, and that would give and take as you move back and forth like a fishing reel device. And that's hooked back to a machine. Now, on the end of the weapon, it's like a little doorbell button. When that's pushed down, it'll actually register on a machine indicating a touch. Now, it actually takes 750 grams of pressure for that to make contact. And in competitions, they actually put a 750 gram weight on the end of it and push it down. The spring can't push it back up again. You get a yellow card for it. Now, in fencing, there's yellow cards, red cards, and black cards. If you get 2 yellow cards, you now have a red card, and your opponent gets a free touch. Preliminary rounds are usually fenced for 5 touches. Basically, referee will say, fence is ready, fence, halt, either touch from the right or touch from the left or nothing done. Now, once one person gets 5 touches, they win the bout. i.e., if 24 fencers show up for a tournament, they'll break it into 4 pools of 6, and then they'll take the top 3 up into the next round, or depending if they have plenty of time, maybe they take the top 4. Final rounds are 15 touch bouts. Now, the weapon itself, very light, very precise. I sometimes refer to fencing as a European form of karate. Back in the 60s, after I got out of the military, I used to do a little karate, a little bit of judo, but I got tired of getting laid up once or twice a year. And I started fencing. To me, all the blade is an extension of the forearm that points your new fist. Karate, you block with your forearm, come in with your fist, and you actually place the fist with your body, not your extending arm. Same thing applies in fencing. You extend, lunge, place the point onto your opponent. Let's see. Down the center of the groove, it's referred to as blood groove. It makes the weapon lighter and more maneuverable. Now I'll put this one down for a second. And we'll go to the one most people get a kick out, is the Saber. This one happens to be an import during the Civil War from France. Basically, sabers, they're normally only sharpened the first third of the blade, and sometimes the back 1/3. So you can come forward and hit, and come back at the same time and cut. Now when you're dueling, it's basically a cutting weapon, so basically you wanted to hit and cut, not whack. Now if you're on horseback, saber really didn't have to be sharp to speak of. You're going along at 20 miles an hour on a horse and you whack somebody with the saber, shock, power alone will probably kill the person. Now the modern sabers, basically, when they first competing with them, you had to hit the front edge or the back 1/3. Currently, they've never been able to figure out how to electrify that. So the current one is that any part of the blade that hit is considered a cut or a touch. Modern saber, which you've seen in Olympics, weighs about the weight of a can of Coke. Not very light, very precise. And even Olympic fencers, the bell guard's as light as possible. And during one competition, they might beat the heck out of the bell guard, but they want that to be as light as possible and very precise. Now in 300 years of combat, they have proven the point's more effective than the edge. So that's one of the reasons that modern saber, even the competition ones, are pretty much straight. Even one of the most modern saber done for the U.S. military was called the Patton saber. And Patton is actually General Patton. He designed it while he was at West Point. Now his background was that he was actually over in Europe with his father, and he learned defense when he's over in Europe. And that's the reason the blade became straight. So the Patton saber is about 1913, 1915. And it is a beautiful weapon. Very nice to look at. Now the saber, kudos to the women. They've been the only ones to win gold medals in the Olympics so far with the saber. Now I sometimes call it equal opportunity for men and women. Not a lot of difference between men and women until you get up to the Olympic level. And then the men are just a little bit stronger. But one of the women in Virginia division could beat over 90% of the guys. And very, very few injuries. In the 50 years I've been doing this, I've seen more injuries in one game of softball than I've seen in 50 years of fencing. So it's a very, very safe sport. I've had students as young as 6, and one of my students was 84 when he started. He was actually into the reenactments, when I learned the saber for the reenactments, and he was a very, very interesting character. But it's one of the few sports you can continue almost all your life. Besides the World Cups, they hold what they call veteran tournaments. And this is for over 40, over 45, and I think this year they brought in over 70. And it's done as fun as anything else. So it's one of these things you can do all your life. Now the last weapon is either called the short sword or the court sword. Now sometimes they call the court sword because this is what they'd wear at court, but just like modern day, you know, a nice Rolex, you have really a fancy hilt, really a fancy blade and everything else that you wear to court to show off. Now, but it was also considered the most dangerous of the dueling weapons. You did not challenge somebody to a duel with this unless you really, really, really knew what you were doing. and even then, it might be an oops and you're dead. Very precise, continues the blood groove. Didn't have to be sharpened very much. This would just go right through somebody. Now the target area on each of the weapons, for the foil or the cord sword, basically the trunk of the body, because it was a killing weapon. And basically if you got run through the trunk of your body back in those days, you'd probably die from infections as much as anything else. But they're sometimes nice and rub it down with alcohol first. So you might not be too bad. Now the target area for epee was the entire body, down to your shoe, to the top of your head, to your wrist and hand. Saber, everything from the waist up, because it was a horseback weapon at one time. If you're riding along, hit somebody on the leg on his horse, you probably just make him mad and try to make sure he does you in really good. Now the modern foil, which I got one here somewhere, I forgot where I put it. I'll be right back. Modern foil, very light, very precise. And on the end of the weapons, like the little doorbell button, when that's pushed down, that's weighed for 500 grams of pressure. Because a lighter weapon, smaller blade, would probably draw blood quicker. Now down the length of the blade, there's actually a wire that goes down the length of the blade, out the back. It's hooked and goes back to the reel in the back and back up to the machine. Now the strip itself is 14 meters long, 2 meters wide. You have a center line that's in the center. 2 meters back, you have what they refer to as the on-guard line. 3 meters back, there's a warning line that warns you only got 2 more meters of ground to fence on. And is there anything else I can think of at this time? Please sign up for classes for Frederick County or for where you're at, and I hope you enjoy fencing. Thank you very much. Goodbye.